Okay, so your bell ringers were on the board already. I gave you guys should have had a few minutes to look through those. Hopefully this up gave you guys a few minutes to look through those. But for the first one, you want to find the slope and y-intercepts of that equation. Okay, and I have a hint on here. Okay, you want to multiply to get rid of the fractions first. So the easiest thing I would do is multiply by that common denominator, okay, which would be 6 in this case. So multiply everything by 6. So 6 times 1/3, remember you're going to cross cancel, so that'll turn into 2 times that. So it's 2y. 6 cross cancels with the 2 to turn into a 3. So 3 times 3 gives you 9 equals 0. Now we got to solve for y. So move the x over and move the 9 over. So subtract 12x, subtract 9. You get 2y equals negative 12x minus 9. And the last step is that we should divide everything by 2. Okay, so our final answer is negative 6x, because 12 divided by 2 is 6. We have the negative out front, minus 9/2. All right, so our slope, negative 6, y-intercept, negative 9/2. Okay, and the second one, it says graph the equation x equals 9/2. So similar to an example that we did yesterday, we had y equals 6, I think it was, for one of the homework questions. But now we have x equals 9/2. So if you think about plotting points, every single x value is going to be 9 over 2. Okay, 9 over 2 is about 4.5. So if I go to 4.5, plot a point there, 4.5 there, 4.5 there, 4.5 there. So every x value is 4.5. So that one is going to be a vertical line that x equals 9/2, just like that. Okay, so chapter 2.3.2.4, the second part of it, we're looking at standard form of an equation. Okay, so standard form looks like that. Okay, so you can pause it for a little bit so everybody can write down the title and standard form right there. Okay, so in place of a, b, and c in this equation, you're going to have numbers. All right, but standard form has the x and the y on the same side. So before we had y equals mx plus b, now we got ax plus by equals c. Okay, and then parts of standard form are here. So x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. X is first and a is positive, and there are no fractions. So you can pause it again so people can write those down. Okay, so x and y are on the same side of the equal sign, so we have ax and by over here. X is the first and a is always positive. So a right here must always be a positive number. So if I had something like this, how do we change that to a positive number? Well, you can multiply everything by a negative 1. So you're just going to change your signs. So you would actually rewrite that like this. Then that would really be standard form right there. And then no fractions. So if you think back to the bell ringer that we just did, we had fractions in that, and how did we get rid of fractions? Multiply everything by a common denominator. So I'm going to kind of use this example that I used up here before, but add some fractions in there. So if I had this, how am I going to fix that? I'm going to multiply everything by a 3, because that's going to get rid of this fraction right there. Okay, so we're going to do a few of those examples. So go ahead and write these two examples down. So if you could pause the video, everybody writes those down. We're going to change these two to standard form. So on the first one here, remember standard form has to be ax plus by equals c. So x has to be first it has to be positive, and there can't be any fractions. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange everything so it looks like ax plus by. So that means this has to switch places with that. All right, so we're going to have negative 5x plus 7y equals 2/3. Okay, that's my first step. Next step, we know it's always got to be positive, so I can change the signs of everything. 5x minus 7y equals a negative 2/3. And then the last step was getting rid of fractions. So we know that we have a fraction here. How do we fix that? Multiply everything by 3. Okay, so that gives us 15x minus 21y equals, the 3's are going to cross cancel here. So that just gives us a negative 2. And then that is our answer in standard form. Go ahead and pause the video and try to do the next example. Okay, so looking at the next example, we have to have the x and y on the same side. All right, so I'm going to move that 1/2 x over. So we should have 1/2 x plus y equals 3. And then similarly to the last one, we have to fix the fraction. So multiply everything by 2. Okay, that's going to change it to an x, because 2 times 1/2, that's just 1. And then 2y equals 6. That right there is our standard form equation. Okay, x and y are on the same side. X is positive, and there are no fractions. On to the next example. So, graphing in standard form. So we have a few steps for graphing in standard form. Okay, so we want to find the x and y intercepts, graph the points, so graph those x-intercepts, or graph that x-intercept and that y-intercept, and then draw the line between those 2 points. Okay? So pause the video, copy that example down, and we're going to go ahead and get our x-intercepts and y-intercepts and graph. Okay, so to get our x-intercept, remember x-intercept is where it crosses this line. Okay, so hopefully you can see that red ink. Where it crosses that line. Think about what the y value is when it crosses that line. Okay, where is it crossing the y-axis? Or where does it look like it would cross the y-axis? Your y value is going to be a 0, okay, because it's going right through there. All right, so that means we're going to plug in 0 for y. And then we're going to solve for x to get our x-intercept. So if you plug in 0 for y, what really happens to my y term there? It's gone. Okay, that's gone. So you can cover that up with your hand, you can cross it out, you can do whatever you want. If you know that you're plugging in 0 for there, we can go ahead and solve for x now. So divide by 3, you get x equals 2. So if x equals 2, that's my x-intercept, which is going to be right there at 2. So that point is really 2, 0. That's my x-intercept. All right, so that's half of it. Now we have to go again and figure out our y-intercepts. So just like x-intercepts, we could cross out that y. So opposite, you can cross out the x with our y-intercept, because x is going to be 0. Okay, so then we can go ahead and solve that. Divide by 2, you get y equals 3. So that would be this point right there. So if you think about what point that actually is, for my intercept, that's 0, 3. So we have our 2 points graphed, and then from there, we can just draw a line between those 2 points. So graphing with intercepts, I think, is actually way easier than graphing with anything else because you just need 2 points and you can go ahead and graph those. Okay, another way that this is taught is kind of with an XY chart. And you can do it however you like to do it, but I know that Miss Hinkle teaches it this way. She calls it zero method. Okay, so you have your X, you have your Y, and in the middle here she has the work. So you know that X is going to be 0 for one of them. So you're going to put a 0 for X there, and you know that Y is going to be 0 for one of them. So you put a 0 there for Y. This is really my point that I'm picking for X. I'm going to pick a 0 for X because that's going to be where my y-intercept is, or my y-intercept is going to be at x equals 0. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing, pick a 0 for y. So if I plug in 0 for x, you get 2y equals 6. Y is going to be 3. Okay, so you got 0, 3, which is that point right there that we got. And then we plug a 0 in for y. Then we're left with 3x equals 6. Sorry, 3x equals 6. So divide by 3, you get x equals 2. So 2 comma 0 is that point. So you can do it either way you want. I think the first way is just as easy as the second way. Okay? So on to the next example here. So we're going to use point slope form today. So point slope form is that right there. So go ahead and pause the video, write that slope down, or write that form down, and we're going to use that coming up here. Okay, so we're going to write equations in standard form first. Okay, so our method to writing in standard form. Method 1, you're going to write in slope-intercept and then change to standard form. Okay, that's our first method. So go ahead, pause the video, write that down. So our example following that, we're going to write an equation in standard form for the line with a slope of 3 that passes through 0, -2. So just like we did yesterday, and you can write that down quick if you want to. So I would just write down point there, slope of 3, and we're going to figure out the equation of this line in standard form. All right, so just like we did yesterday, we're going to use y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. So we're plugging in our slope, and we're plugging in that point that we're given to figure out what b is. So I have -2 for my y, slope is 3, x is 0. Okay, so what does b equal? B equals -2. So let's plug everything back in. We have y equals 3x minus 2. So that's our slope-intercept equation. We have to change it to standard. So you can look back at your notes so we can remember what we need to do to get it into standard form. Well, we have to have x and y on the same side. X has to be positive and no fractions. So that means this has to move over. Okay, so when we move that over, you can see that it's going to become negative. Okay, because we're going to have to subtract it from both sides. So it turns into -3x plus y equals -2. So how did we fix a negative out front before? Change all your signs, multiply it by a negative. So we have 3x minus y equals 2. And that's our equation in standard form. Okay, that was method 1 to changing equations or writing equations in standard form. Now we have other ways to do that. Okay? If you need to pause the video here to go ahead and catch up, you can do that, or go back if you would like. So method 2, we're going to use point slope form and then change to standard form. All right? So go ahead and write that down. Pause if you need to. So remember, point slope form, I'm just going to write it over here again. I don't think I have it. I do have it below there. Point slope form is that right there. If you didn't have that written down before, you want to get it written down right now. Okay, because that's another important form of linear equations that we're going to be using. You want to box it, put arrows around it, smiley faces, stars, whatever. That would work as well. So just like the last example, you can write out slope of -4 and my point through 3, -1 for the example. So this is really probably the easiest way to get an equation of a line, but you have to have one point and you have to have a slope. But if you have 2 points, then you can find a slope still, but either way you have to have a slope and a point, hence the name point slope. All right, so we are going to plug everything in. So you see an x1 here and a y1 there. That's the point that you choose. So we have x1, y1. And that's what we're putting in for our points. Okay, so we have y minus, so we're subtracting that -1 here, equals m, my slope, which is a -4, times x minus 3. So right here is really where you got to be careful when you're plugging in numbers, because that's going to change your sign because you have a double negative. If you did not put that in parentheses when you plugged it in, you might forget to change the sign. But from there, we just multiply everything out. So we have y plus 1 equals -4x plus 12. That's a distributive property here. So then, just like the last example, what's the next thing that we got to do? We have to put all the x's and y's on the same side. We only have one of each here, so put the x and y on the same side, and then move the number over. So I'm going to add 4x to both sides, and I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And then we'll be pretty much done. We have 4x plus y equals 11. So do we have a negative out front? No, so we're good. Are there any fractions? Obviously not. So we're good to go right there. Okay, so if you guys need to rewind and watch that example again, you can. We're going to keep going on to the next one. Okay, so write this example down. I want you guys all at your tables to see if you can figure out these 3 different forms for the information given. So pause the video. You guys work at your table to see if you can figure this out. So we're given the information. We have this point and a slope of -3. So remember, we would start with either finding slope-intercept form or point-slope form. Okay? I think the easiest one is to do slope-intercept, or point-slope, sorry. The easiest one is to do point-slope form. Okay? Because this is going to be our x1, that's going to be our y1, and we're just going to plug stuff in. So I have y minus y1, which is 4, equals m, which is a -3, times x minus x1. So that would be good for point-slope form. So from there, I want to change that into slope-intercept. Okay, so we can do that pretty easy. So if you distribute that 3 through there, and we're just going to make it look like slope-intercept form. So I distributed everything. Now the only thing I have to do here is move that 4 over to the right. So I'm going to add 4, add 4. So we get y equals -3x plus 19. And that is our slope-intercept form. So then what really is the only thing we have to do to change it to standard form? Well, think about our steps for standard form. We have to have x and y on the same side. X has to be positive and no fractions. So from here, you would just add the 3x over. And then you got it in standard form. So pretty easy from there. So that's what you should have for your three answers here. All right, so standard form, you should have 3x plus y equals 19. Point slope form, you should have y minus 4 equals negative 3 times x minus 5. And slope intercept form, we should have y equals negative 3x plus 19. All right, so there is your assignment. If you would like to go back, I've sent you guys all the video link, or you can ask the sub or whoever's in your classroom today to go back to any of the examples so you can replay them. But I'll make sure you guys get the video link so that way you can watch it as well. Okay, good luck.